Her daughter walked into the party with salon-perfect hair and walked out in tears, butchered by scissors held by someone she trusted. But her mom? She didn't cry. She hit record. The birthday party that changed everything. I should have known something was wrong the moment I walked through that door and saw Grace's face. My 11-year-old daughter stood frozen by the kitchen counter, her beautiful hair. The hair we'd spent $120 at a real salon to perfect just that morning gone. Not trimmed, not styled differently. Gone. Hacked off in jagged, uneven chunks that made her look like she'd stuck her finger in a light socket. What happened? I whispered, dropping my purse. Grace's eyes filled with tears. They held me down, Mom. Grandma and Aunt Sabrina. They said I was showing off. The room went silent except for the sound of my sister Sabrina clearing paper plates, acting like she hadn't just destroyed my daughter's confidence along with her hair. My mother continued wiping counters, humming softly as if nothing had happened. It's just hair, Ruby, Sabrina said without looking up. She was making Bella feel bad on her own birthday. Just hair. Those two words hit me like a slap. Because it wasn't just hair, it was Grace's pride, her excitement, her joy at finally feeling beautiful. It was the 2 night shifts I'd picked up to afford that salon appointment. It was the way her face had glowed that morning as she admired herself in the mirror. I knelt down and pulled Grace into my arms, feeling her small body shake against mine. Over her shoulder, I could see my parents and sister watching us with expressions that ranged from defiant to mildly annoyed. Not apologetic, not ashamed, just inconvenienced by our reaction. Can we go home now? Grace whispered. Not yet, I said, my voice eerily calm. We need to have a conversation first. That's when Sabrina finally looked at me, and I saw something in her eyes that I'd been seeing my whole life, but had never named. Satisfaction. She was pleased with what she'd done, pleased that she'd found a way to dim Grace's light. The pattern had been there all along, I realized. Growing up, I'd been the difficult sister, the one who got attention without trying, who made people laugh, who boys noticed despite Sabrina being older and more traditionally pretty. My parents had spent years subtly telling me to tone it down, to let Sabrina shine, to stop being too much. I'd thought escaping to college, then medical school, then building my own life would break that cycle. I'd thought having Grace and giving her everything I'd never been allowed to have would protect her from the same treatment. I was wrong. Grace, my mother said, her voice artificially sweet. Why don't you go play with Bella while the adults talk? No, I said firmly. Grace stays with me. My mother's mask flipped slightly. Ruby, you're being dramatic. We were just trying to help. Her hair was getting in the cake. By holding her down and cutting it off? She wouldn't put it in a ponytail when we asked, Sabrina chimed in. She was being defiant. I looked at my daughter, my brave, kind, gentle daughter who'd spent weeks excited about this party, who'd made Bella a handmade gift wrapped in glitter tape. Grace, is that true? Were you being defiant? Grace's voice was small but clear. I told them I wanted to keep it down because it looked pretty. Then Aunt Sabrina grabbed me and pushed me into a chair. When I tried to get up, Grandma held my shoulders down. I kept saying no, but they laughed and said I needed to be humbled. Humbled. An 11-year-old needed to be humbled for having beautiful hair at a family party. They filmed it too, Grace added quietly. Connor was recording on his tablet. He said he was going to put it in the group chat. The room temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. They'd filmed my daughter's humiliation like it was entertainment. I stood slowly, my hand still on Grace's shoulder. When I spoke, my voice was steady, controlled, dangerous. You filmed it. It was just kids being silly, my father said from his chair, not even bothering to look up from his plate of cake. You're making a mountain out of a molehill. That's when something inside me crystallized. This wasn't about hair. This wasn't about a birthday party gone wrong. This was about power, about control, about a family that had spent generations teaching its daughters to compete instead of support each other. And now they'd come for my child. Grace, I said, go get your things. We're leaving. Ruby, don't be ridiculous, my mother started. I'm not being ridiculous. I'm being a mother. Something you apparently forgot how to be the moment you decided my daughter's happiness mattered less than your granddaughter's feelings. I guided Grace toward the door, but not before I turned back to face them one more time. 3 generations of women who taught me that being beautiful, being confident, being happy was somehow selfish, who'd now tried to pass that poison on to my daughter. This isn't over, I said quietly. My mother laughed, actually laughed. What are you going to do, Ruby? Call the police over a haircut? I didn't answer. But as we walked to the car, Grace's small hand in mine, I was already planning exactly that. Because what they'd done wasn't discipline. It wasn't even punishment. It was assault. And I was going to make sure they understood the difference. The next morning, Grace sat at our kitchen table in her favorite hoodie, the hood pulled up to hide the damage. She'd barely spoken since we got home, just sat quietly while I'd done my best to even out the worst of the cuts. Mom, she said suddenly, why did they do it? I set down my coffee cup and really looked at her. At 11, she was already beautiful in that unconscious way that comes naturally to some children. She had my eyes, but her father's easy smile, and a confidence that I'd worked hard to nurture, a confidence that my family had just tried to destroy. Because sometimes people mistake kindness for weakness, I said carefully. And sometimes people who've been hurt try to hurt others. Were you hurt like that too? The question caught me off guard. I thought about all the times I'd been told to dim my light, to make others comfortable, to apologize for taking up space. The gray dress incident when I was 14. The way my parents had always found reasons why Sabrina deserved the nicer things, the better opportunities, the benefit of the doubt. Yes, I said honestly. I was. Grace nodded, processing this. Then she looked up at me with an expression far too mature for an 11-year-old. Are you going to let them do it to me too? The question hit me like a physical blow. Because that's exactly what I'd been doing, wasn't it? Bringing her around people who saw her light as a threat, who viewed her happiness as a problem to be solved. I'd been so desperate to maintain family relationships that I'd walked my daughter straight into the same trap I'd spent years trying to escape. No, I said firmly. I'm not. That afternoon, I made 2 phone calls. The first was to Detective Martinez at the local police station. I explained what had happened, that my daughter had been physically restrained and had her hair cut against her will while being filmed. The detective listened carefully and asked me to come in with Grace to make a formal statement. The second call was to Connor, my nephew. If he'd filmed it, there was evidence. Hey, Connor, I said when he answered. I need you to send me that video you took yesterday at Bella's party. There was a pause. Which video? The one of Grace getting her hair cut. Oh, that one. Yeah, it was pretty funny. Hold on. 30 seconds later, my phone buzzed with a video message. Connor had sent it without question, with a laughing emoji and the comment, Aunt Ruby, you should see your face when you walked in. I watched the 12-second clip with Grace beside me. There she was, crying and saying no, please no, while Sabrina held her hair and my mother stood behind them, arms crossed like she was supervising a chore. My father sat on the couch eating cake, occasionally offering commentary like she'll thank you later, and someone needs to teach her she's not special. Connor's laughter was audible behind the camera. Bella could be heard shouting, do the front too. When it ended, Grace looked at me with eyes that seemed decades older than they had yesterday. Can we go to the police now? We drove to the station in comfortable silence. Grace sat straight in the passenger seat, no longer trying to hide her ruined hair. When we walked into the building, she held her head high. Detective Martinez was a kind woman in her 40s with graying hair and eyes that had seen enough to recognize truth when she heard it. She listened to Grace's statement without interruption, watched the video twice, and then leaned back in her chair. We're going to open a case, she said simply. What happened to you was assault, Grace. Adults don't get to touch children's bodies without permission, even family members, even for something they call just hair. Grace nodded solemnly. I know. I felt it was wrong when it was happening, but they kept saying I was being dramatic. You weren't being dramatic. You were being human. That evening, my phone rang. It was my mother, her voice shaking with rage. Ruby, what have you done? The police called. They want to interview us about Grace's hair. This is insane. What I've done is protect my daughter from people who think they have the right to humiliate her for sport. It was discipline. She was being defiant. She was being 11. And you assaulted her. There's a difference. The line went quiet for a moment. Then my mother's voice returned, colder now. You're going to destroy this family over nothing. No, Mom. You already did that. Yesterday, when you held down my crying daughter and let my sister hack off her hair while my nephew filmed it for entertainment. I'm just making sure it has consequences. I hung up before she could respond. Over the next week, the fallout was swift and severe. My family tried everything: guilt trips, threats, bargaining, denial. They posted on social media about the misunderstanding, painting me as an unstable mother who was weaponizing my daughter. So I posted the video. Within hours, the narrative changed completely. The same people who'd been calling me dramatic were now demanding to know how adults could laugh while a child cried. The video went viral locally, and suddenly my family's version of events crumbled under the weight of actual evidence. Grace watched the view count climb with satisfaction. Now they can see what really happened, she said. 3 weeks later, we sat in family court. My mother, father, and sister all pleaded no contest to misdemeanor assault charges. They each received fines, community service, and were ordered to complete parenting classes. Sabrina also got a year of CPS monitoring. But the real victory was smaller and more personal. It was Grace walking into her new salon appointment with confidence, choosing a short, stylish cut that was entirely her own decision. It was her telling the detective, "I matter, and what happened to me mattered too." It was me finally understanding that protecting my daughter meant more than just giving her opportunities I'd never had. It meant teaching her that her worth wasn't negotiable, that her voice mattered, and that people who tried to dim her light, even family members, didn't deserve access to her life. 6 months later, Grace still doesn't want to see them. She doesn't ask about family gatherings or wonder why we stopped visiting. When well-meaning friends suggest that family is family and we should work things out, Grace just shrugs. They showed me who they are, she says with wisdom that breaks my heart. I believe them. I used to think that strength meant enduring, that love meant sacrifice, that family meant accepting unacceptable behavior because blood ties made it mandatory. But watching my daughter reclaim her voice taught me something different. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to accept cruelty disguised as tradition. Sometimes protecting someone means choosing their well-being over other people's comfort. And sometimes justice looks like an 11-year-old girl walking tall, knowing that someone finally fought for her when it mattered most. The birthday party was supposed to be about celebration. In the end, it was about liberation. Just not the kind any of us expected.